to order. Welcome to meeting number 25 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. Once again, Bill C-218 sponsor, Mr. Waugh, is here with us today. He's replacing Mr. Cooper. Welcome back, Kevin. Mr. Massey, who's there in person, is replacing Mr. Garrison. Welcome back as well, Brian. And Vance Badaway is replacing Mr. Virani today. Welcome, Vance. Great to have you here today. So today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. Just so that you're aware, the webcast will always show the person that is speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures of for Mr. Massey specifically. We ask that you please follow your guidelines and protocols with respect to distancing and such. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for your cooperation. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd outline just a few rules to follow. For interpretation, you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom call, please select the language that you'd like to listen to. You can speak in any language of your choice, any of the official languages of your choice. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you're on video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal. When you are not speaking, your microphone should be on mute. And as a reminder, all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to the speaking list, I do have a speaking list that is available.
Madam Chair, we just lost you. So, Mr. Moore, I don't know if you... I think her connection dropped, so I don't know if you want to take Madam Chair's relay to facilitate the proceedings, and thank you in advance, Mr. Moore.
Sure, I just wish I knew what she was just about to say, but I think at this point of the meeting, we would turn it over to our witnesses for their opening statements. And Mr. Clerk, maybe you can remind witnesses of the order that they were going to be speaking, as well as the time that the chair would have given them to speak.
So she would start with Mr. Hawley, and Mr. Hawley has 5 minutes to make his opening statement. So please go ahead, Mr. Hawley. Thank you.
You're on mute, Mr. Hawley.
I'll start again. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Moore. My name is Sandy Hawley, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the racing industry across Canada. I was a professional thoroughbred jockey for 30 years, starting at the age of 19 years old. I rode around the world, but mostly in Canada and the United States. I have been lucky enough to receive a number of awards throughout my career, including the Order of Canada. I'm also a member of the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, US Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fames, and also it was a great honor to receive the Lou Marsh Award as Canada's Athlete of the Year in 1973 and 76. I'm speaking before you today from my winter residence, which happens to be one of the most historic racing jurisdictions in the world, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby. Despite its rich history, racing here in Kentucky has also faced its challenges recently. But the industry now has a positive outlook thanks to historical horse racing, which may single-handedly save the industry. Horse racing has provided me the opportunity to race around the world, and ended up my meeting my lovely wife, Carew, who is also a thoroughbred jockey. As you can see, horse racing has been very good to me, and it's an industry that contributes $5.7 billion to the Canadian economy each year, and it supports over 50,000 jobs across Canada. These jobs depend on revenue from pari-mutuel wagering and on the horse racing industry. The revenue from and secures many people's incomes, jobs, livelihoods, such as grooms, hot walkers, trainers, owners, blacksmiths, veterinarians, agriculture workers, and jockeys, just to name a few. There is a deep history and tradition to Canadian horse racing. In fact, just a few years ago, the Canadian horse industry celebrated its 250th anniversary. I understand the world is changing and sports betting happens all around the world. Although I'm not an expert in this area, it seems like it makes sense to legalize it so the government can regulate it and use it to create jobs and generate revenue. I am in favor of single sports betting, but if not done correctly, it could be devastating to our industry and the many jobs within the agriculture and rural communities. I've always been very proud of Canadian horse racing, notably Woodbine Racetrack, where I rode my first race back in 1968. Horsemen from around the world love to come to race at Woodbine Racetrack for its beautiful facility and hospitality. I've also worked for Woodbine Entertainment for the last 25 years since I retired from my riding career as an ambassador in media and media relations, and continue to do so. I mentioned earlier that I spend my winters here in Lexington, Kentucky, where historical horse racing, whereby a wager can be made on an anonymous race that happened in the past. Basically, it's the same thing as wagering on a live race, but instead, there's no need of operating a live race. It uses thousands of anonymous races from the past, which probably include a few of mine, and offer it as a wagering experience for the customer. Then, similar to betting on a live race, some of the money is given back to the industry to help sustain it. Historical horse racing has literally been the savior for horse racing in Kentucky, and I strongly believe historical horse racing can have some profound impact here in Canada. I'm counting on the government to recognize the industry, its hardworking people, its value, and make the right decision on the amendment of Bill C-218, so that betting on horse racing would be excluded. Because without the exclusion, it would kill the revenue string that supports the sport, all the people, and the business that depend on it. Just for instance, it almost be like trying to drive an automobile without gas or a battery. On behalf of the entire industry, I'm asking this committee to ensure that horse racing has an opportunity not only to survive, but thrive for another 250 years, as it continues to be an important part of so many daily lives as it has been to mine. Thank you for your time here this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawley. My apologies, I had some technical challenges there. I'll just continue introducing the rest of our witnesses. We have from the Canadian Centre of Ethics in Sport, Mr. Paul Melia, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer. And we have Mr. David Shoemaker, who is the Chief Executive Officer and Secretary General of the Canadian Olympics Committee. And from the National Hockey League, we have Mr. Keith Watchell, who is the Chief Business Officer and Senior Executive Vice President, Global Partnerships. And we also have Conal Berberich, who's the Vice President Legal. Welcome. I didn't get to mention it before, but I have these 1 minute and these 30-second time cards that will help you in understanding the 5 minutes and where you're at. And so I will then call on the Canadian Centre of Ethics in Sport if you'd like to please proceed with your 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, bonjour, Madam Chair and members of the committee. The Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport is pleased to be here today with the Canadian Olympic Committee, with whom we've been collaborating to examine the impact of Bill C-218 on Canadian sport. Through this short presentation, the CCS will share with you concerns around the increased risk of match manipulation and ways to mitigate that risk. And the COC will comment on the potential for revenue generation to support sport development in Canada. The CCS supports Bill C-218 as we believe a regulated framework is needed to appropriately manage single event sport betting in Canada. Technology and organized crime have combined over the years to render Canada's current laws regarding prohibition of single event betting all but meaningless. Single event betting on Canadian sports, including by Canadian residents, is already a multi-billion-dollar a year business, with most of the revenue going to organized crime. Legalizing and regulating single event betting in Canada would be an effective harm reduction strategy. However, it also comes with associated risks to the safety of athletes and the integrity of Canadian sport. Bill C-218 is to move forward. The committee should be aware of the increased risks to athlete safety and the integrity of sporting competitions posed by match manipulation. Legalized single event betting in Canada will increase the risk of match manipulation. And match manipulation is linked to organized crime who take advantage of vulnerable athletes, officials, coaches, and other support staff in order to fix the outcome of sporting competitions. This is a global issue and it's already occurring in Canada. Many countries such as Australia, Great Britain, and Germany are actively addressing match manipulation through legislation designed to prevent, detect, and punish match fixing in sport. No such legislative framework currently exists in Canada. The CCS therefore recommends that the passing of the bill be accompanied with the following specific actions to reduce the risk of match manipulation. Canada should ratify the Council of Europe Convention on the Manipulation of Sports Competitions, which is open to non-European nations. As an example, Australia has done so. The Government of Canada should require all federally funded sport organizations to, 1, demonstrate they have rules in place to manage the risk of match manipulation, including disciplining those engaged in match fixing, and 2, demonstrate that all participants within their sport are educated about the risks. The incremental cost to the Government of Canada and to federally funded sport organizations associated with the above 2 recommendations should be covered through the incremental revenue associated with single sport betting. I will now turn it over to David.
The timing is right for Canada to expand sports betting. This bill has the potential to unlock new growth opportunities, reduce illegal betting, and generate revenues for both the sport industry and governments. Our interests are in ensuring that single sport betting is introduced in a responsible, effective, and profitable manner. Responsible. The impacts of Bill C-218 may include an increase in match manipulation and gambling, which we believe poses at least as much risk in amateur and Olympic sport, where athletes don't earn big incomes and large amounts of betting still take place. The International Olympic Committee has created a code on the prevention of manipulation of competitions. And in 2020, together, we organized a workshop in Canada on match manipulation. Many international sports organizations have established integrity units to safeguard their sports and to educate and protect athletes. A focus on protection and education will be required going forward. And a portion of incremental tax revenue should be earmarked for mental health care and addiction education. Profitable. Deloitte estimates that within 5 years of legalization, Canadian sports betting could grow to $28 billion a year. We must ensure that revenues are distributed back to the principal content providers that stage the events. In our case, our member national sports organizations, many of whom operate on shoestring budgets, to enable them to provide increased support to athletes at all levels of the sports system. And lastly, effective. National sports organizations will need support in establishing infrastructure to ensure betting integrity and in monetizing all available channels, including partnerships with sports betting companies, media rights, and data sales. We must equip sports organizations with the tools and support to capitalize on the expansion of sport betting. We believe the expansion of betting options can be a game changer, and if we focus on betting being responsible, effective, and profitable, we can all win. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right 5 minutes on the dot. I really appreciate that.
We worked at it.
Thank you. We'll now go to the National Hockey League. Please go ahead. You have your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the committee. My name is Keith Wachtel. I'm the Chief Business Officer and Senior Executive Vice President of Global Partnerships at the National Hockey League. I'm here today with my colleague, Connell Berberick, a Vice President in our legal department. We would like to thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee members for inviting us here today to share with you the NHL's journey and experience on the topic of single event sport wagering. First, the National Hockey League supports Bill C-218, the proposed Canadian federal legislation to eliminate the provision in Canada's criminal code that prohibits provincial governments from offering wagering on a single sporting event. Though the NHL had previously opposed single event sports wagering for the reasons we have publicly stated on the record, the practical reality is that the landscape in North America has changed. Our experience in the United States since 2018 has demonstrated that a well-regulated marketplace that both advances and protects the interests of relevant constituencies can be established in a safe and responsible manner. Since the Supreme Court of the United States 2018 decision in Murphy versus the NCAA overturned the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, the American Gaming Association reports that 25 states and the District of Columbia have passed legislation that permits or will soon permit single event sports wagering. In that regard, we point to the growing number of commercial relationships that are being formed within the NHL, including US-based league level relationships with currently 5 and soon to be more major sports books. As part of our league-wide policies that govern these relationships, sports books are required to, among other things, rep and warrant that they are licensed and legally compliant, including enforcing age verification and geo-gating requirements, take appropriate steps to monitor wagering on the NHL and share information, offer only appropriate bet types, and promote responsible gaming. As part of the NHL's US efforts, we have partnered with industry trade groups and have committed resources in support of responsible gaming, including public service campaigns. All interested constituencies are aware that such a change in the law governing sports betting in Canada will present both opportunities and certain challenges, as it has in the United States, as we collectively navigate the new sports betting landscape. Establishing a level playing surface across the North American sports betting landscape will promote transparency, fairness, and responsibility for all stakeholders in the space, as well as the public. We believe that any sports betting legislation should provide a comprehensive framework that appropriately takes into account and adequately balances the diverse interests of the various constituencies. Accordingly, we strongly believe that the key elements of any legislation should, among other things, provide for appropriate consumer protections and technological safeguards, for example, age and geographic restrictions, abuse addiction hotlines, and the like. Ensure the protection of intellectual property rights, permit leagues and governing bodies to restrict the types and timing of bets that might be placed on games, certain so-called prop bets that might lead themselves to a perception of inappropriate incentives or behavior, and appropriately allocate resulting revenues across the various stakeholders. Though the National Hockey League has no concerns regarding the integrity of our game, we take our responsibilities in this regard seriously, as reflected by the extensive ongoing monitoring we undertake in the normal course, both internally and via leading global experts in the space, such as Sportradar. The National Hockey League provides family entertainment and has worked tirelessly since inception in 1917 to earn and maintain a reputation for the absolute integrity of its competition for the good of the sport and our fans, irrespective of any legislative changes across Canada and the United States related to single event sports wagering. We prohibit and will continue to prohibit all National Hockey League employees and players from engaging in any wagering on National Hockey League games. Madam Chair, thank you again, and we look forward to the committee's questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wachtel. That's 30 seconds to spare for you. So we'll now go into our first round of questions, starting with Madame Finley for 6 minutes. Madame Finley, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here with us. I know you all have very busy lives, but we do appreciate it as we study this bill. This is for either of the NHL witnesses to answer. The NHL voiced opposition, and you've mentioned this in your open remarks somewhat, to Bill C-290, a similar bill to the one before us today. That was back in 2012. And at the time I was on this very committee, so I remember this. But that was then and this is now. And I'm wondering if you want to take just a little more time to explain why the NHL has changed its stance on single event sports betting. Mr. Wachtel or Berberich?
Would you like to, yeah, where did they?
You have to unmute yourselves,
please.
I think.
Sorry, I was disconnected from the call, so I did not hear the question.
Okay, Madam Chair, can I do it
Please
again?
go ahead.
So the NHL voiced opposition to Bill C-290 back in 2012. I was also on this committee, and that's a similar bill to the one before us today. And I know you touched on this before, but can you just explain why the NHL has changed its stance on single event sports betting, just giving you a little more time to speak to that?
Sure, thank you, and I'm glad you asked that question. As we mentioned in our opening statement, a lot has changed since 2018. First, we're simply adapting to the evolving legal landscape. But second, the marketplace is changing dramatically, and as such, we've been working collaboratively with all the stakeholders. There's been extensive technological innovation, increased partner sophistication, and perhaps more importantly, I think a true understanding of how a regulated legal sports market can better promote responsibility and integrity versus a non-regulated market.
Thank you. In the NFL's written submission to our committee, it was detailed the importance of requiring the use of official league data to protect consumers and ensure integrity in the sports betting marketplace. In your view, is this necessary? And if so, why?
Well, we think that it's important for all sports books or anyone that is involved in the ecosystem to use the league's data. That is the verified data. And I think it provides consumers with the feeling of authenticity and that it's backed by the property that where the data is coming from. What we have noticed in the United States is that all of the sports betting companies are securing that data directly either from the league or from third parties like Sportradar. And they are happy to do so because they want the ability to provide the best information to the public, again, in an authentic way. So we support it, whether it is part of the regulations or not. We do believe that all the sports books will want to secure the league's data.
Without divulging, of course, specific parties or confidential negotiations, have you already been in some talks to license official league data in Canada?
No, we have not. Having said that, from a sports betting standpoint, as part of our relationship with Rogers Media Corporation, who has our exclusive rights to broadcast NHL games, Rogers has the rights to the league's data. They get all of those rights directly through us. And we're obviously very pleased with the relationship that we have with Rogers. And if this bill gets passed, then obviously we would work with both Rogers and other parties in this area to make sure that anyone who is participating legally in sports betting would be able to access that data.
Thank you. We've heard from the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports that a key concern with single event sports betting is match fixing. And I know we have written submissions detailing annual gambling policy training, for instance, 15,000 NFL league personnel, that sort of thing. Does the NHL have a similar training program in place? And if so, who is required to participate in the training and what does that training look like?
Hi, yes, thank you for the question. As we mentioned in our opening statement, we take integrity incredibly seriously. We have no concerns with integrity in our sport, and it's something that we value as an inherent piece of competitive sports, irrespective of any bill on sports betting. And so we would always pursue integrity in any forum. We are aware that there are a number of different approaches to it. There's a regulatory approach that we've seen across the United States requiring responsible gaming messaging and educational platforms so that participants are aware of the issues. We ourselves partner with responsible sports books and hold them to the highest standards in their messaging and their monitoring requirements. We ourselves also monitor for using data to ensure that there are no other abnormalities. And as my colleague, Mr. Wachtel, mentioned in his opening statement, we also have a strict prohibition on player and employee wagering. Our detailed policies are evolving and always keep in mind these important integrity considerations.
Thank you. With that, I'm out of time, and you answered 2 of my next 3 questions. So I thank you very much for being so prescient. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Madam Findlay. We'll now go to Mr. Maloney for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for being here. I'm going to apologize to Mr. Hawley and to the Center for Ethics in Sport because I'm not going to ask you questions because I agree with everything you've said. This bill it has support from all corners. I suspect it's going to be implemented. This is going to happen in the United States. It's going to happen in Canada. So the real issue is what this is going to look like when it gets rolled out. So the NHL, I'm glad you're here. So this is going to have an impact on ethics. I don't think game fixing is going to be a problem in the NHL just by virtue of the salaries. But there's going to be different jurisdictions in the United States dealing with the implementation. There's going to be different jurisdictions in Canada dealing with the implementation. We have teams in 4 different provinces, and this is ultimately going to be a provincial responsibility. This is going to have an impact on where you can bet, when you can bet, how much you can bet, and this is all going to be controlled by different groups. My question to you to start with is the NHL going to have one policy for all places? So for example, if the Toronto Maple Leafs will want to allow betting in the rink, are you going to, but you're not allowed to have that elsewhere, are you going to allow that there? Like, are you going to supersede policies locally, or are you going to go with the flow in every jurisdiction?
So certainly the regulatory framework will take precedence. Whatever the provinces decide to do to regulate gaming within their province is something that will supersede in all senses. That is the law, and we will follow it, and our clubs will follow the law. We ourselves will develop policies and continue to evolve the existing policies to address gaming, single event sports gaming in Canada should this bill pass. We would have to take a look at what that policy would mean in the various jurisdictions. So I wouldn't be in a position to answer the hypothetical, but I can tell you that we will continue to have policies and, as I mentioned, evolve our existing policies to address gaming across Canada would this bill pass in a manner that is compliant with the regulatory framework.
Here's my concern. I interpret your answer to mean we're going to optimize or maximize revenue here. And I know teams in the NHL are already jumping on this. Pittsburgh Penguins have already been looking into ways to capitalize on this new opportunity. It's going to happen here. I'm concerned about taking my niece or nephew to a Toronto Maple Leafs game, and they're going to be able to walk down, and instead of buying pizza, they're going to be trying to talk me into getting them to place a bet on the game, not just on the outcome of the game. I think there's a lot of aspects of this bill that people haven't thought through fully. For example, it's single event sports betting. Do you anticipate at any time in the future that you will not only be able to place a bet on the winner or loser of a game, but if I'm at a hockey game, will I be able to place a bet after the second period on who's going to score the winning goal?
So, Mr. Maloney, those are all great questions. First, I do want to share, we do have policies in place that prohibit betting from terminals and kiosks and things like that in the arena. What you have to understand is right now, the prevalence of mobile wagering is the predominant form that is being used. In fact, New Jersey is up to close to 90% of all bets are done through a mobile handset. What you're seeing in Pittsburgh and other venues is simply branded lounges that they're turning into, call it sports bars, with age restrictions that are branded and allowing people to come in, but you're not able to bet in there no differently than you would use your handset if you're sitting in the arena or sitting at home. So from that standpoint, we are not turning our venues into casinos. So again, it depends on what the regulation is, but if mobile sports betting is part of it, that means people can bet anywhere at any time just by using their device. As it relates to your question on the ability to what you were referring to as prop bets, that is being done now. Obviously, you can't look at a Super Bowl without thousands of prop bets, including how long the national anthem is going to be or who's going to win the coin toss. We certainly think that prop bets will be more relevant for our sport, as well as all other sports. But to us, that's really more about the engagement. Most of the money that is bet on sports is predominantly the outcome of the game. These prop bets that you see are very little handle, but provide a lot of engagement. And quite frankly, we like the engagement factor. We think that all of this will provide an opportunity to generate new fans to the game. And we all know, whether it's gambling, but also social gaming, fantasy gaming, the likelihood for people to engage and participate in that sport is much greater.
Okay, I'm running out of time here, but look, I understand the revenue desire, but there's a balance to be had here between revenue and protecting people. So if I understood you correctly, you said the NHL will have a blanket policy prohibiting betting at the venue, but you can't stop people from doing it online on their phone, which I understand. But I think that's an important distinction, and needs to be, and even on the prop betting, as you say it, there needs to be a prohibition by the league, and it needs to be consistent throughout the league, regardless of the venue, regardless of the jurisdiction, in my opinion.
And if may jump in briefly, I mean, we are going to have to evaluate what our policies would look like in a new legal regime in Canada. I don't think we could speculate for certain what those policies might be. What I can say is, using your niece and nephew as the example, I think provinces would probably follow the approach that states have taken, which is to ensure that gaming is not only not accessible to those under the legal wagering age, but it's not marketed to those under the legal wagering age as a legal matter. We ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. I will now go to Monsieur Fortin. Voulez-vous commencer?
Mr. Fortin, your 6 minutes, please proceed. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Welcome to all the witnesses, and thanks for being here today. This piece of legislation has been discussed for numerous years in Parliament. It's always enriching to hear a diversity of points of view that are raised year after year and that are different according to the different sport. My first question is for the folks from the National Hockey League. Here's what I'd like to know. It's my understanding that you're defending or you're preventing your employees from betting on games and matches. But what do you intend to do to prevent match fixing or hockey match manipulation? There are several people or many people that believe that match fixing is a real risk. So I'd like to know what you've put in place to prevent match fixing or manipulation.
Sure, I can start the presentation on behalf of the NHL on this item. So in the first place, we favor a regulatory regime that provides regulators with the types of oversight tools that they would need to have to administer legalized sports wagering across Canada. And so I think bringing something that is underground above ground and shining a light on it is a necessary piece of this entire discussion. We ourselves, as Keith mentioned in his opening statement, partner with an industry-leading expert, Sportradar, who has sophisticated data tools that help us monitor for ourselves so that we can ensure the expected patterns would happen. We ourselves also partner only with licensed and regulated sportsbooks who themselves prioritize responsible gaming and integrity in all its forms.
For example, if I wanted to place a wager on the number of particular events that occur in a match, what prevents me from entering into agreement with the player and say you'll get an X dollar amount as a bonus if you are able to accomplish this or that in a particular game or match?
So first and foremost, one thing that is in all of our agreements with our sports books is that the NHL will approve all bet types. And we are very careful to make sure that the bet types that we include are ones that can't easily be manipulated or that are more suggestive or subjective, I mean. The other, and you know, the group on, the Committee for Ethics did talk about, and this is true, the real concern in this area is more for amateur athletes that are not making millions of dollars. As we said, we take integrity very seriously. It is at the paramount of our DNA. But ultimately, we really do think this is a much bigger concern for amateur athletes that, as mentioned, are not making that kind of money. But we do work with the sports operators. And quite frankly, the sports operators have just as much concern about integrity as we do. It is their lifeblood. If people don't feel that there's integrity, then they won't bet.
What would be the punishment for a hockey club, for example, whose member, player, trainer, regardless, was found guilty of, in fact, that kind of match fixing?
Yeah, I certainly don't think that Connell nor myself can speak to that. That's really a question for our ownership, our commissioner and deputy commissioner. But I'm sure, like other things, they would take swift and decisive action.
Well, I understand for the time being, there's no known measure or penalty. All we know is that it's very serious and that there will be consequences, but there's no specific penalty in place to date, correct?
We couldn't answer any question about a specific penalty, but as you can tell, integrity is of the absolute, it's a paramount consideration. Okay. So it's something we would take incredibly seriously.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for that. As far as horse racing is concerned, perhaps Mr. Hawley could respond to this question. I understand your position, and there seems to be unanimity among horse racing that you need revenue to look after horses, pay jockeys, and so on. But each time I hear that, I wonder, isn't it kind of similar in other sports? And wouldn't it be appropriate to simply in fact, regulate sports betting or wagering such that those expenses are covered? For example, enter into agreements in Quebec with Lotto Quebec that could allocate some of the income from sports betting to looking after horses and the facilities. Wouldn't that be an appropriate way of proceeding, Mr. Hawley?
Yes, sir. We're definitely not against single sports betting. It's just a thing that we hope that we can help regulate it in some way. As I mentioned, there's a number of jobs that depend on this. I mentioned a few jobs, but there's many more that I could mention. But I think it's just very important that there is an amendment on C-218.
Okay. Parce que
well, your position is that horse racing should be excluded from C-218. And what I'm wondering is, could horse racing be included, but by changing the way revenue or income is allocated? You agree with that position, correct?
Yes, sir. We actually have tremendous technology at Woodbine and, of course, racetracks across Canada. We have Horse Player Interactive, which is a way of betting on horses. And I think if the government would allow, that Woodbine would be a big part of Bill C-218.
Thank you very much. Merci, Monsieur Fortin.
Thank you, Mr. Fortin.
Mr. Massey, I believe you're in the room. Please go ahead. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports, I think your requests are very reasonable and actually would be good things to do even outside the legislation, also within it in terms of either regulations or so forth. They may not be specifically here, but should be accomplished and set as a goal. And thank you for your presentations and your commitment to these measures. It makes important strides for several reasons. To Mr. Hawley first, the historical horse racing, it seems to me that the horse racing industry is looking more for a revenue stream than really anything else. I have a lot of empathy because the provincial government under McGuinty closed the Windsor Raceway despite the fact we introduced a charity casino which actually made a profit and was actually doing okay, and we lost all the subsequent benefits, as you mentioned. And I have empathy with you being right now jealousy in Kentucky. It's actually a quicker drive from Windsor to Kentucky where you're at than it is a quicker drive from Windsor to Ottawa. So I really have a lot of empathy there, but I guess the problem is this. would you not like kind of agree that historical racing is based on fiction and just algorithms, and that makes it a little bit different? You could do the same thing, historical betting on hockey, football, anything, and so perhaps that might need some more thought, and then under provincial regulations could even offer a better path. Would you not agree that might be better? Because if not, what is the specific amendment that you want for 218? My understanding is it would require several and maybe perhaps even different legislation that could even actually scuttle this one. So maybe you can comment on that, please.
Well, as I mentioned, hopefully Woodbine would be able to be a part of single sports wagering. I know historical horse racing has, saved horse racing here in Kentucky and a number of other jurisdictions around USA. I think it would be very, very helpful to Woodbine, a number of other racetracks across Canada. It'd be a very simple thing to do, and I think it would
what would be
I'm
the
not an
changes then?
expert.
So what would be the changes in the legislation that we would need?
Well, I'm not really an expert on legislation, but I think Bill C-218 includes horse racing for single sports betting. And
Actually,
I think
it actually doesn't. Yeah, so it actually doesn't. And so I've been involved in this for over 10 years. And this legislation is the same as what was drafted by Joe Comartin, my colleague from Windsor-Tecumseh at that time. And in fact, actually, I think the government's legislation they introduced on this was even better. And perhaps an amendment that we could look is towards bettering this legislation there. But I guess specifically to historical horse racing, so you're saying it's based upon a fictional race. Is that not correct?
Yes, it's based on a fictional race. I think there's like 60,000 different races that they use. And as I mentioned, probably some of mine are in there as well. But yeah, somebody can make a wager on the race. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but they make the results come up. And if you happen to be lucky to pick the right horse, then you're a winner, just like betting on a live race without having to put on the show.
Well, thank you for that. And I agree with your importance of the industry, and it's more than just actually the betting that goes on with regards to the horse racing. There's a whole culture and a whole series of things that, and I think it needs even more thought than this bill here.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for your testimony today. And I just think that sometimes this may not be the proper vehicle, or we could actually get better results through the provincial models as well too.
Thank you, sir.
That's because if we don't do this soon, then I don't know if it's going to take another 10 years or not. Quickly over the National Hockey League, I'm really happy that you're on board. I still have letters from Gary Bettman opposing my legislation, and I won't take it personally as a goalie. I'm used to being shot at. So I do want to, though, touch on, like, what, it's good that you changed, and appreciate that. I think that's actually really important to recognize, because things have changed for different reasons. And there has been, betting before. We have issues related to, Operation Slapshot and Rick Tocchet. Can you maybe highlight what you've learned over the years in terms of how to better protect the players and how to be more responsible, and also the best practices that are going to go on in the United States now, because we have 17 states that have already moved towards this and implementation, and others that are coming. So perhaps you can kind of enlighten us on terms of what that's kind of taken place, because I think that's really important as part of the story, and I thank you for that.
Could you just rephrase your question?
Yeah, so we know that there's been betting issues in the States before, like Operation Slapshot related to the Rick Tocchet affair with regards to betting. He was a part of the Phoenix Coyotes at that time. A New Jersey state trooper actually went to jail for 5 years on it. And now in subsequent years, there's now this betting going on in the United States, but your changed position also comes with different measures of supports and also inclusion of practices. Could you highlight what those are to bring those best practices to better protect the players, better protect the organizations, and what the NHL has really kind of learned that can be shared over here? Because you're not starting from scratch here on the situation in Canada.
Correct. I mean, so I guess there is this multifaceted approach that we've taken with the industry. Examined things for ourselves and our own policies, and worked with regulators and trade groups to that end. So is there a specific best practice that I can answer? I don't know, but I can tell you that the underlying issues that you're suggesting are the types of issues that we take very seriously and do try to work within a collaborative model to address.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Massey. We'll now go to our second round of questions, starting with Mr. Waugh for 5 minutes. Sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, guests. And I'm going to start with the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports. 2 years ago, you had a white paper in response to the International Symposium on Match Manipulation and gambling in sport that took place in Toronto. In fact, Paul, you were there as one of the presentations that you gave. In 2 years, has it come a long way? Because we're getting ready for the Olympics coming up here in Tokyo. So let's start from when you had the white paper 2 years ago in Toronto. Have you worked towards a consensus, not only in this country, but certainly, other countries too, leading up to the Olympics and other sport events that may take place once we get out of this COVID?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I would say, as far as the white paper and any traction that we've gotten in trying to advance the recommendations that are contained in the paper, not to overstate it, but I think what we experienced in Canada at the sport level, at the government level, quite frankly, was there were so many other competing priorities for sport. This isn't a burning bush on anyone's desk, so we really can't pay attention to it unless we have a catastrophe that commands our attention. We believe there's a catastrophe bubbling below the surface of sport, and so we've continued to work hard. Other countries have grabbed a hold of this. Australia, Germany, Great Britain, Finland, where they've created integrity units in their countries. And they've said the way to address this is we need one universal policy that wraps its arms around this in a legislative and regulatory way. We need confidential reporting mechanisms. We need one set of consequences that would apply to all sports. We need mandatory education that all participants would be required to take. And as was pointed out, the most vulnerable sports in our country are our national sport organizations, the Olympic sports, the Paralympic sports, because these individuals don't make much money. And so that's where organized crime focuses their efforts. And the prop betting is where they really focus their efforts because they believe they can make innocuous agreements around the coin toss or something like that, double fault in a second game of the second set in tennis, and the player is going to get $10,000 for doing it. And they say, well, okay, I'll do that because that's not throwing the match. But then they hook them in and they elevate their ask after that. So these athletes are very, very vulnerable. And so, one universal policy, an independent integrity unit administering it, confidential reporting, a set of consequences, mandatory education, all the things we did in anti-doping, for example, could apply to the issue of match manipulation and a way to prevent it. So this bill, is a real shining light in terms of getting some traction around the recommendations in the white paper, and that's why we so strongly support it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Mr. Shoemaker, they list 15 sports like basketball, badminton, baseball, curling, esports, all this, ice hockey even. So for the Olympics, your thoughts on manipulation in the Olympics? We've seen it, of course, for decades. Individual athletes are taking PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs, and so on, and then we find out 4, 5, 6 years later they get caught. But just your thoughts on this bill and forward to the Olympics, because amateur sports could be a target for this, and we just want to know what we can do for them.
I actually think Olympic sport needs to be viewed through two lenses. One is, competition at the Olympic Games themselves, where there's a strong commitment through the IOC's code and through its association with the Integrity Betting Intelligence System, which makes the ability to enforce and monitor the integrity of Olympic sport on a level quite similar to its ability to monitor doping. Of course, it doesn't mean it won't take place, but I think it reduces the risks and the vulnerabilities. But Olympic sport takes place on a 17-day basis every 2 years, winter and summer. Those sports, though, are taking place year-round, 365 days, and there are nearly 60 Olympic sports who have competitions all the time. And today, there is an incredible amount of betting on those sports. And that's where we need a responsible approach that allows us to better protect, better educate, and take the proceeds and reinvest them back into the sports system.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Waugh. We'll now go to Madame Brière for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses today.
My question is from the folks from the National Hockey League. You indicated in your briefs that you tabled in 2014 during the study of a previous bill, which is very similar to the one under consideration today, that those who bet by using offshore betting facilities or illegal bookmakers will probably continue to do so because federally regulated casinos will never be able to provide the same commodity or the same opportunities to those kinds of offshore and illegal betting and facilities. Thereafter, you said that legal betting is only going to exacerbate this kind of problem in terms of this kind of wagering, and that this kind of legal betting will end up on illegal platforms. Do you believe still that legalizing this single event sports wagering or betting will be of benefit ultimately to the illegal wagering platforms at the end of the day?
Thank you for your question. I think that, as we've talked about in our earlier brief, a lot has changed certainly since 2018, let alone going back now to 2014, almost a decade ago. And I do think what we've seen, especially as multiple states have enacted legislation in the US, that a unregulated market has no protections, has no oversights, no safeguards, but a regulated market, and the ones that we're talking about here, and all the implementations we've all put in place for integrity monitoring, for responsible gaming, is actually working. And it is taking money from the so-called black market and legitimizing the ability for people to wager on single game sports. So we have seen a difference, and a lot of that has to do from things like technology and the ability to make sure that all these monitoring services are able to find any irregularities. So we are certainly think that a regulated market makes a lot more sense, and think that that is a much better way to enact legislation than looking at the illegal market.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. My second question. We know that sports gaming is a highly addictive activity, and the stakes are high when it comes to legalization. Do you believe today that this legalization will exacerbate addiction to gaming in Canada?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, addiction is a serious issue, and we believe that a regulatory framework that provides resources for wagerers who wish to wager lawfully, that provides them with an opportunity to seek tools to help themselves if they need that. A model that involves sportsbook operators who take the issue very seriously themselves and provide responsible gaming messaging in our own interest in seeing responsible gaming, which we have partnered with other trade groups like the International Center for Responsibility in Sports, to likewise work together collaboratively to raise awareness for the issue, to provide educational tools, and to provide tools for those people who need to seek help to seek help. We believe there is some data to indicate that increased sports wagering availability does not increase the incidence of addiction as well. So we think a regulated marketplace and a collaborative marketplace will provide the opportunity for help should those people need it.
Thanks a lot. And my last question, est-ce que les Nordiques vont...
Will the Nordics come back to Quebec City? That's my last question.
That's a question that unfortunately I would need to be answered by our ownership and the commissioner. So
thanks a lot.
No problem.
Have a good day.
Merci. Thank you, Madame Briere. We'll now go to Monsieur Fortin for 2.5 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, if ever the Nordics come back to Quebec City, I'd like to know first, because I'll place a bet on that. Now, I have a question for Mr. Melia. In your opinion, Mr. Melia, well, I understand that the Canadian Sports Ethics Centre covers a certain number of sports and not just hockey, but I'd like to know your opinion on the matter of horse racing betting in Bill C-218. There's a current debate. Some want horse race betting to be excluded, and others would like it to be on an equal footing with other sports gaming. I'd like your opinion, sir, on that issue.
Well, I haven't actually given a lot of thought to that particular issue, but I would just suggest that I wouldn't see why it would be excluded. It is a sport and it can be regulated, and I think that all of the same concerns that one would have around match manipulation in sport racing would be the same ones we would have around match manipulation in other sports. And so the importance of education, the importance of being able to report when it's happening, to have consequences, all of those issues would need to be part of the regulatory framework, apply to all sports, including horse racing.
Okay. Un autre sujet pour...
Changing topics again for you, Mr. Melia. My colleague just raised the issue of addictive gaming. And gambling addiction is an important issue, not only for us, but for all Quebecers and Canadians. So what can the various organizations do to contain this particular issue of compulsive gaming? I'd like to know what your opinion is on this. Is there a way of proceeding such that all sports would be regulated to, in fact, contain compulsive gaming?
Well, I think it starts with education. I mean, again, this gambling, this single game betting is going on. And so the legislation that's being proposed is a way in Canada of creating a legislative framework and regulation around it. And part of that regulation should surely include education and support services for mental health and addiction that is associated with gambling. And I think that the legislation provides an opportunity to provide greater services and support to those who may become addicted through gambling than the current system, where we have an unregulated market and it's going on, and we're not really aware of how much is going on and who may be addicted and who might be harmed. So I think there's an opportunity to provide the appropriate services, and this goes to the revenue sharing that would come from the gambling to make sure it supports those support services.
Thank you very much.
Monsieur Melia. Merci, Madame la...
Thank you.
Then last but definitely not least, Mr. Massey, you have 2.5 minutes as our last questioner for this round. Go ahead, sir.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe to Mr. Shoemaker and bring you back into the conversation here. Maybe some comments with regards to the Olympics have a mixture of professional and amateur athletes. So I think that the consistency that you're requesting is important. Perhaps can you kind of, highlight that, because I think that's a unique aspect with regards to how we bring in regulation and also watch for matchmaking and so forth.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's part of the theme that we need to pay close attention to the trends that have happened globally, the trends around legalization, and the trends that digitization in sport have created around us. And so we have what is reported to be nearly a $15 billion industry that's happening right now, and only 3% of it, to our understanding, through some of the studies we've done, happening legally on single game betting. But we think that the same framework should occur to professional athletes that occur to amateur athletes. And we very much think that this notion of amateur athlete cannot be lost in this conversation. And Mr. Melia commented on this notion that the risks, the vulnerabilities and the risks to them may in fact outweigh those to professional athletes, where the incentive to manipulate can be much, much greater, given that they do not earn a great income from their sport. Having said that, that's why I said there's two ways of looking at this in the Olympic Games, because the incentive to throw something in the Olympic Games at the Olympic Games themselves may not be that high, but it's in those national sporting competitions, things that are occurring back in Canada where there's still a whole lot of gambling going on, where we have real concern.
A lot of that's taking place in the illegal market right now, and I think your point is actually something that we really need to do some extra work on, because the amateur sports athletes become professional. So obviously, getting into the behavior that we don't want to have happen, and then advancing in the professional is worse than actually doing what you're saying right now. Take it more responsibly, so the best practices are there as they advance through their sports.
Yes, correct. And there again, there's young athletes who are in most cases all amateur, meaning they're not earning money in their sport. And then there are many who are Olympic athletes, and we think of them as NHLers, let's say, competing in the Olympics, where we think of these as professional athletes competing in the Olympic Games. And yet still the very definition of an amateur athlete, a rower, a luger, a bobsleigh athlete, who do earn some income, but not a huge income like the major professional sport athletes do in this country.
Yeah, and if we do nothing on this, if we leave it the status quo, then all that goes to organized crime right now and other types of betting offs. So, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Thanks very much. So that concludes our first hour. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the witnesses for your incredible testimony today, for taking the time and for being with us and to answer our many, many questions. I really appreciate it. If there are any further clarifications that you would like to provide based on some of the questions you've heard today, please don't hesitate to send Mr. Clerk a note, and we'll get that circulated amongst us as well. Thank you again. We'll now suspend just for a minute as we start our second round and let in our witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
just before we get into the testimonies for the benefit of our witnesses, I will just make a few comments. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you're ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. When you're not speaking, please make sure that you're on mute. Interpretation for the video conference is available at the bottom of your screen. Make sure that you have selected the language that you would like to listen to. You can speak any of the languages, any of our official languages that you choose. When you're speaking, please speak slowly and clearly so we don't have issues with interpretation. And when you're not speaking, you should be on mute. So I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. From the Central Ontario Standardbred Association, we have Bill O'Donnell, who's the president, and we have Dave Drew, who is the finance committee member. From the Mohawk Council of Kanawaki, we have Chief Gina Deer, we have Chief Michael Delisle Jr., and we have Renee Pelletier, who's the lawyer and managing partner, the Altius Claire Townsend. And then from Score Media and Gaming Inc., we have John Levy, who is the chairman and the chief executive officer. So thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Lewis, is that raised hand on a point of order?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. Just want to make 2 points. Number one is Mr. Waugh, MP Waugh, I believe will be subbing in for me.
Yes, I was notified of that.
Thank you very much. And the second thing is to Mr. Levy or Levi, I have to tell you, Madam Chair, I'm going to be a grandfather and on May the 16th, and my grandson's name is going to be Levi. So I wish I could be on this conversation more, but thank you, Mr. Levy, Levi. It's pretty exciting. So thank you, Madam Chair. Very excellent, and have a great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Appreciate that intervention. So now we'll go into hearing from our witnesses for 5 minutes each. I'll just let you know I have these 1-minute cards and these 30-second cards that will allow you to keep time. We'll start with the Central Ontario Standardbred Association. Please go ahead, unmute yourself. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity to present to your committee. My name is Bill O'Donnell. I'm a president of the Central Ontario Standardbred Association, which represents and supports the horse owners, trainers, drivers, caretakers, tradespeople, and others who participate in horse racing at Ontario's 12 standardbred tracks. I've been involved in horse racing all of my life as an owner, breeder, trainer, driver. I am currently Vice President of the Ontario Standardbred Adoption Society, OSAS for short, where we find homes for retired racehorses, and also I'm a director of the Ontario Racing Board. Our association supports the proposed expansion of and regulation of single sports wagering in Canada, but wants to ensure that our agriculture-based horse racing industry is protected in the process. I'd like now to turn our presentation over to Dave Drew for more details about our recommended changes to Bill C-218. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to point out that Bill O'Donnell is one of the top drivers in North America. He was inducted into the Harness Racing Hall of Fame, both in Canada and the United States. He's also inducted into the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. He has been tireless in his efforts and continues to work full-time on improving racing. So in support of having legalized and regulated single sports wagering, and in order to help protect the livelihoods of approximately 50,000 Canadians who are involved in contributing $5.6 billion to our economy every year, there are 2 small but very important changes that we're recommending to Bill C-218. A key protecting horse racing is to ensure that provincial governments and those contracted to provide single sports wagering pay a fair share or appropriate share related to the horse racing industry for the cost of breeding, raising horses, training horses, as well as the cost of conducting racing. Currently, horse racing is fully regulated and is very much integrated between the racetracks, owners, trainers, jockeys, drivers, and the wagering dollars is a very significant piece of supporting horse racing by helping support purse funding. The current illegal betting that is happening on horse races prevents us from earning a large piece of that revenue. So we do not want to see additional organizations set up that could put as their portfolio racing on horses and not have to support the integrated portion of that, which involves the cost of putting on races, the cost of breeding, etc. So the answer to that element is embedded in November 26, 2020 government bill C-13. And that provided a solution under section 204(7)(b). And the amendment that is recommended is as follows: quote, bookmaking, pool setting, or making or recording bets, including bets made through the agency or a pool or parimutuel system on any horse race. So that it includes an exemption for horse racing so that others cannot simply add horse racing onto their portfolio. So it would be excluded from fixed odds single sports wagering, but would still continue on under the regulated current system. The second small change in terms of wording, but very important, is to include the ability to provide historic horse racing as a parimutuel wagering product where people can wager on the outcome of horse races that have been raced in the past. This has been implemented in Kentucky, it's been implemented in Virginia, and has provided sources of parimutuel wagering which help support the current horse racing business. So in order to allow horse racing, historic horse racing, there's only a single word that requires changing, and that is the removal of the word horse race in section 1971. And so our recommended term relating to what is defined as a bet is, quote, bets means a bet that is placed on any contingency or event that is to take place in or out of Canada without restricting generality or the foregoing, includes a bet that is placed on any contingency relating to a fight, match, sporting event that is to take place in Canada, save and except that with respect to a horse race. That means a bet placed on a contingency event. And that would remedy the issue of allowing historic horse racing, which we see as a vital add to the product. These two changes would make a significant difference to the 50,000 lives that are involved in horse racing in Canada. We appreciate the opportunity to share that information with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drew. We'll now go to the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake for 5 minutes. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
We are pleased to address you today concerning Bill C-218 to make note of the impacts it will have on the gaming industry in our community and to recommend the bill changes, amendments, and accommodation for reconciling with the interests of Kahnawake and other First Nations in Canada. I will turn it over to Chief Mike DeLille on some of the history.
Thank you, Chief Deere. A brief history of gaming in Kahnawake. The Kanien'kehá:ka, Mohawk, and English have engaged in gaming and sports betting since time immemorial, a fact that has been confirmed by historical research. Games of chance and wagering on sporting events such as lacrosse have always been and continue to be an integral part of Kanien'kehá:ka culture and central to our relationships with other nations. In 1996, as an assertion of our inherent and self-determination, Kahnawake enacted the Kahnawake Gaming Law, an assertion that is clearly also reconcilable with sections 35(1) of Canada's Constitution Act, 1982. Over the following 25 years, we utilized our own ingenuity and resources to build a successful, sound, and reputable gaming industry in both the online and land-based sectors. Online and land-based gaming in Kahnawake is licensed and regulated by the Kahnawake Gaming Commission. Their pragmatic and thorough approach to regulation have earned the Commission a reputation of being fair, diligent, and well-respected. From an economic perspective, gaming in Kahnawake is a socio-economic initiative. Gaming produces significant revenues that are used for a variety of community projects. We would not otherwise be able to recognize. It employs hundreds of people, both from Kahnawake and elsewhere, and facilitates valuable workforce development. Kahnawake sports betting brand, Sports Interaction, is operated by Mohawk Online, a company wholly owned by the Mohawk Council. Profits from Sports Interaction have been benefiting our community and have most recently provided us much needed relief from costs stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Kahnawake gaming industry is a perfect example of an Indigenous community succeeding. We are facilitating economic self-sufficiency to take care of our evolving needs. In our 25 years of operation, we have exercised our jurisdiction over gaming openly and conscientiously. We have done so with the knowledge and support of members of the current federal government, such as Minister Lametti. Firstly, we must be clear that Kahnawake does not take issue with the intent of the code being amended to permit provinces to facilitate sports betting. We recognize Bill C-218 as a positive move forward for Canada's gaming industry. However, we do take issue with Bill's failure to consider, accommodate, and reconcile the interests of Indigenous peoples. In its present form, the bill threatens the economic resilience of Kahnawake gaming industry. Simply put, Bill C-218 perpetuates an injustice to Indigenous communities that resulted from an agreement between Canada and its provinces in 1985, whereby authority to conduct and manage gaming was exclusively delegated to the provinces. At that time, Indigenous peoples were not consulted, nor our interests considered or accommodated. We were simply closed out. What happened in 1985 was a stain on the honor of the Crown. While it is true that since 1985, some provinces have made efforts to accommodate Indigenous interests and share some portion of gaming revenues, this is not the case in Quebec. To date, Quebec has not entered into any agreements to share in gaming revenues with Indigenous communities, nor have they ever indicated a will or intent to do so. In short, advancement of Bill C-218, unless it is amended, will result in a deepening of the injustice experienced by Indigenous communities, including Kahnawake. In 1985, worse, Kahnawake's gaming industry will so severely be affected, it could face total decimation. The present state of the single event sports wagering market is frequently described as being under control of either organized crime or offshore interests. To be very clear, Kahnawake's gaming industry is not operated by organized crime nor offshore interests. The fact is, we occupy ourselves with good and honest social responsibility and have built a gaming industry that we stand behind as being integrous. This fact must be considered in your deliberations. I'll pass it back now to Chief Deere.
The committee has the power to recommend amendments that will correct the 35-year-old injustice to Indigenous communities. You have the power to accommodate and reconcile the interests of the Crown with those Indigenous peoples. You have the power and the urge to urge Parliament to balance the interests of the wealthy and the powerful with the interests of Indigenous communities. Our proposed amendment to the bill was set out in our written submission to the committee. We invite you to consider recommending these amendments in your report, not only because they are compelling legal arguments, but to do so to simply correct some of the wrongs, and it's a just thing to do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief Deere. Appreciate that. I hope the remainder of it comes out in questions. So now lastly, we'll go to Score Media and Gaming Inc. Mr. John Levy, you mentioned Hamilton and Toronto. I'm in Mississauga in the middle, so you'll also have to tell me the correct pronunciation for Mississaugans.
Oh,
Is it
my
Levy
goodness.
or Levy?
I'll go with Levy. How's that? And I'll wave to you every day when we get out of COVID as I'm commuting from Hamilton to Toronto. So
Perfect. Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes, sir.
So Madam Chairperson, first of all, thank you for providing me with an opportunity to articulate our full support for Bill C-218 and the legalization of single event sports betting in Canada. I'm proud to appear before you today on behalf of The Score, a Canadian innovation success story and third-generation family business. Following in the footsteps of my father, who was a pioneer in the Canadian cable television industry, We have built theScore into a North American leader in sports media, betting, and esports. Utilizing a technology-led, mobile-first strategy, theScore has become one of the most popular sports media apps in North America. We then capitalized on the emerging regulated sports betting opportunity in the United States and launched an innovative mobile sportsbook operation that is now licensed in multiple jurisdictions. In September of 2019, we debuted theScore Bet, making history by becoming the first media company to create and operate a mobile sportsbook in the United States. theScore Bet is now live in 4 states with a growing footprint and user base. Our early entry into regulated sports betting has positioned us at the forefront of the robust industry and led to significant growth of our company. In 2 years, our workforce has increased by more than 50%, and we're actively hiring at an accelerated pace to support the rapid expansion of our sportsbook operation. Canada is now poised to usher in this vibrant industry that has potential to be transformative to our economy. Sports betting has flourished in the US since legalization in 2018. It's created thousands of jobs, generated additional advertising revenue for sports media platforms and sponsorship revenue for teams and leagues, and produced significant tax proceeds for the states where it's legal, all providing a highly regulated system for fans to feel comfortable placing bets on teams and sports they love. It's clear that a similar, thoughtful, and modernized legal wagering framework would benefit all Canadians. The essential component of the public policy conversation around this bill is underscored by quoting the bill's name in full, the Safe and Regulated Sports Betting Act. Unregulated and illegal sports gambling is rampant across our country and offers no consumer protections or tax revenues for the provinces. Sports wagering needs to be monitored and regulated with comprehensive oversight to protect the consumers. Bill C-218 will allow the provinces to implement necessary consumer safeguards to provide for a safe and responsible sports wagering environment. These have been established by provincial and territorial governments for other forms of wagering over decades. Single event sports betting will seamlessly integrate within these regulatory frameworks already in place. We urge the House of Commons and the Senate to pass Bill C-218 as quickly as possible. In connection with the legalization of single event sports wagering, we acknowledge the need for the horse racing industry to be safeguarded. We note that Bill C-13, the government version of this legislation, contained language to properly address this issue, and we support an amendment to Bill C-218 that will replicate the approach of Bill C-13, thereby ensure that the interests of the horse racing industry are protected. Time is of the essence with the passing of this bill. These gaming revenues represent a significant boost to a recovering economy, incenting job creation and regional economic development in many communities that will see direct and immediate benefits. Until the bill is passed, consumers will continue to remain exposed as they engage with unregulated outfits. There is now widespread industry and clear cross-party support to amend this outdated federal law, and it's time we seize this opportunity. I thank the members of the committee for their consideration and thoughtful deliberation of this bill and the opportunity to provide my perspective and recommendation. Members of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levy. You're very, very punctual with your time. Really appreciate that. We'll go into our first round of questions for 6 minutes each, starting with Mr. Waugh. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to the 3 groups that have joined us here today. To the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, so I go on your website. You are the first online sports book in Canada with Sport Interaction. How's that going? How much do you take in per year? Can you share some of those numbers with us here today?
Well, we've been doing quite well during this COVID time. There's been an improvement. We have over 4 million, I believe, this year, but again, COVID has really restricted people from movement, and it's made an improvement on the site.
And regulatory aspects of your sport interaction. Can you talk about that? We've had the Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority on here as a witness earlier, and maybe talk about your regulatory system that you operate under right now in Quebec. Could you speak to that if you don't mind?
Talking about the regulatory system and the due diligence that is done in order to get a license.
Yep.
There is a very thorough background check of due diligence for people who will be licensed within Kahnawake. The Kahnawake Gaming Commission has player protection as a priority. We offer self-exclusion for players to ensure that if somebody is a problem player, that they would be protected. So we have, over the years, worked closely with different jurisdictions to develop and stay on top of all of the forever changing markets, as we had seen, what happened in the U.S. We have made agreements with the state of New Jersey, and we have a memorandum of understanding. We've worked very hard over the years, and Chief Mike DeLille can attest to that. He's been here from the beginning and the earlier years when all of this had started.
Okay, so in your brief, you mentioned that you've had discussions with Justice Minister Lametti. Can you expand on those discussions? And have you talked to the Quebec government about this bill?
We have not talked to the Quebec government about this bill. There has not been much success over the years. Attempts were made to speak with Quebec, but the fiduciary responsibility lies with Canada in our view. So that being said, we had reached out to Trudeau on this bill when we got notification that it was coming forward. We aired our concerns that we had with the bill, and we were told that we needed to contact Minister Lametti. We did have a visit from Minister Lametti, ironically, so we didn't even have to contact him. He came to our community, which is a first for Kahnawake. We had a discussion and we showed him what we do here. We gave him a presentation, and he had talked about the legitimate gaming architecture that we have created here in Kahnawake. There have been some, holdups on getting discussion going on gaming specifically. We did notify Trudeau that, some of the discussion was dragging on, and he recommended that we attempt to work with Minister Lametti on a workable solution for Kahnawake around gaming.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Levy. You've been in this game a long time. Your timing is impeccable. You sold your channel, I think, to Rogers in time, and then you got into gaming before anybody got into gaming. We've noticed your channel 10 years ago. You were the first to give odds on it. You've been very successful, and I just want to talk about the 4 states that you right now have in the United States, and how's that going, and what are you seeing? Because you're up against the big boys like DraftKings and so on in the United States, and sometimes as Canadian outfits, we often swim upstream. But man, you've hit the home run against the big boys.
Wow. Well, I think that's kind of the way we are. When we launched our TV network in Canada, and thank you for your question, we were up against the big boys here in Canada too. We launched in the mid 90s, and TSN had a 10-year head start on us, and Rogers was launching Sportsnet. So we've never been afraid of competing. And, it's always, for us, it's always been about, creating, have the customer come first. And, sports betting was really just a natural extension for us in the context of serving the needs of our consumers. And, the repeal of the single event wagering and introducing Bill C-218 and having it passed was of enormous growth, not only for our company, but for all Canadians. And, we're already experiencing what that looks like in the US, where we've launched in 4 states, working with regulators and creating technology that allows us to be part of the solution and not part of the problem, which I think is very, very important. So, we're very, very excited about the prospect of being able to execute on our home turf and satisfy the needs and the passions of our Canadian millions, literally, of sports fans all across Canada that are looking for sports wagering.
So have you had any discussions with provincial and territorial authorities here in the country?
Absolutely. Our team has been, part of the consultative process for the last year and a half. And we're actually, in one of those unique positions that we're able to, to talk about our experience in the States. And, one of the disadvantages of it not being legal in Canada is we've had these millions and billions of dollars that are floating in the unregulated and gray market and should be brought inside and allowed to, to be, to grow businesses like ours and to satisfy leagues and for tax revenues that are available. But, it's all about the possibilities that are created if and when sports betting becomes entirely legal. And yes, we've been part of the process with the provinces. They're ready to go. Ontario's jonesing to go forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll now go to Mr. Badaway for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir. Your time is starting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And may I take this opportunity to first acknowledge that the lands that I'm speaking from here in Niagara are those of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. And with great respect to those in the past and still residing here, I want to give that mention. With that as well, I do want to thank many members, bipartisan effort, there's no doubt, throughout the many years for this bill being brought forward, 218. Those members such as MP Eric Kuzmerchek, Brian Massey, Kevin Waugh, as well as Minister Lametti, thank you for bringing this forward and putting it on the table. It's long overdue. Folks, I think for the most part, this bill attaches itself to equitable economic benefits for those across the country, as well as bringing something above ground. That's something being legalized wagering for single sport betting, and therefore not being part of the gray market as it has in the past. Being from Niagara, there's no question we are positioned to benefit, being a border community, and with that, 2 major casinos, and within an area that attaches itself to a great amount of people. But again, I want to go back to that word equitable. And with that, here in Niagara, hundreds, if not thousands of jobs will be created, tens of millions of dollars will be made. And of course, the equity, it's going to place us and the equitable balance is going to place us with our competition across the border. There's no doubt will be of a benefit. But putting all that aside, I do want to prioritize my time with our Indigenous community, Chief Deere, as well as Chief Delisle Sego. It's great to see you folks here, and I appreciate your time that you're giving us. But you both spoke earlier, and Chief Deere, you in particular, had run out of time with some of your comments. And I do, with all due respect, want to give you that time right now, give my time to expand on some of the comments that you were about to make, and some of the points that you were about to make, because I do feel that a lot of what you're discussing and the Indigenous community is discussing is very important to create that equity and to ensure that that it is a partnership between the provinces and territories and, of course, the federal government. So with that, Chief Deere, I'm going to go straight to you and allow you to finish some of the topics that you were discussing earlier.
What I was going to finish on is to ensure that we're not shut out this time. Back in 1985, we were shut out. And here is a chance, to have an amendment that includes Indigenous communities and populations. We are having a difficult time with COVID, but being involved in the gaming industry has helped us help our community members. We are helping them in an individual basis and with their local businesses through the funds that we have gained through this endeavor with Sports Interaction and Mohawk Online. So again, we do support what's being proposed, but we also would like to see, I wouldn't even say a carve out, but just a level playing field for Indigenous communities. Again, within Quebec, we do not have any agreements with the provinces, and we have no revenue share with the province. In other provinces, Indigenous populations have some benefit or have some agreements, and that's absent here in Quebec. And we firmly believe that it's the responsibility of Canada, to make that amendment in this instance and accommodate First Nations, because we always talk about reconciliation and the wrongs that had been done in the past. And as we move forward, even with Bill 15 and UNDRIP, there is the right to economic development.
With that said, Chief Deere and Chief Delisle, you can jump in at any time as well if you would like. But we see some of the challenges that we have in our Indigenous communities all across Canada when it comes to especially infrastructure, housing, and things of that nature. Do you find that this balance, this equitable balance, would enable your and many other Indigenous communities that will participate to leverage the dollars that are made available to them by all levels of government to then therefore bring your infrastructure, water, sewer, housing into balance with the expectations that you as your community have?
Absolutely. We're not only looking at our community, we have been looking at some of the other communities, and we have opened up our donation policy so that we could start to assist other First Nations in different ways. So for us, it's not just about Kahnawake. It is truly about helping all of Indigenous populations across Turtle Island.
With that, and I'm sure within your own community as well as others, those asset management plans are being put in place in terms of recognizing your capital needs. Do you have any price tag? Do you have any infrastructure deficit that you're recognizing within your own community, and then therefore what these funds can actually, these balanced funds can actually contribute to?
Absolutely. I mean, when we look at some of the people that do not live in the village proper and the water situation they have, we still have people living in substandard housing. You know, we're making efforts to fill in all of the gaps as they come to us. Language and culture, for instance, we're working very hard to revive that. This was almost a lost language at one point. And I will say today that my aunt has passed away, and I'm going to be going to her funeral. And she was a language speaker, first language speaker. But this job was very important. So she gave me the strength to be here today. Helping our people is integral, and this revenue does help our people.
Well, on behalf of the whole committee, we all give our condolences as well as sympathies to you and your family. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. And with that, I thank you. I thank you for being here. And I thank you for giving that input into us, because I do feel that ultimately the funds that can be leveraged with respect to this bill being passed, and of course, the involvement that we have with you will in fact go to that those infrastructure needs that you have for your community. So once again, I thank you for that.
Nyawa.
Nyawa.
Thanks very much, Mr. Badaway, and Chief Deere, very, very sorry for your loss. We'll go now to Monsieur Fortin. Please go ahead, sir. You have 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. And thanks to our witnesses for being here today. It's always important to get different perspectives on issues as crucial as this one. My first question is directed at Mr. Levy. I understood from your testimony, Mr. Levy, that you're of the opinion that Bill C-218 is a good piece of legislation, but that C-13 is even better because horse racing should be excluded. Now, I understood your testimony on that point. I'd like to understand the rationale, the reason why, in your opinion, horse racing should be excluded from C-218.
Votre micro est éteint.
Your microphone is off, Mr. Levy.
Mike. I knew that was going to happen. Thank you for your question, and it's an important point because I don't think hopefully there's no confusion about this. What we've said is that we support an amendment to Bill C-218 so that it basically follows the same approach as Bill C-13, which, as written, did have protection in for the horse racing industry. From my understanding is that the racing industry is fully supportive of that amendment. And you could go into the specific details of it, but without going into the detail, it basically protects racing to be able to operate and conduct racing the way they always have. And it didn't get caught up in Bill C-218 with what was an unintended consequence. So basically, it's an amendment to C-218 to bring it in line with what was originally proposed for C-13, which is favorable to the horsemen and which the horsemen are in favor of and are supporting. The second element they're talking about, which is historical racing, is an additional amendment. Quite frankly, I don't know what historical racing is, and I think there was some comments, and I'm a horseman too. I know Bill and Sandy directly, and I think that that's something that may work, may not work, but it's certainly something that should be debated at some future time. But for now, I think the amendment that we are proposing and that's being fully supported by everybody is just to bring C218 to look like C13, get it passed, lets everybody win in having horse race in having betting be a part of a licensed and regulated tax environment.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Levy. Now, perhaps it's not possible, and you can tell me if that's the case, but I'd like to understand the rationale behind this. Is the horse racing industry, well, it's a costly one. We agree there. You have to pay for the food, for the jockeys' wages, etc. But it's an expensive sport, isn't it? You just have to look at hockey players and see how much they're paid. It's huge amounts, millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of $millions per team. And, you know, there's the staff and so on and so forth. So substantial costs. I'd like to therefore understand why we have a different system for horse racing than for other sports. I understand that there needs to be accommodations made. We need to ensure that provinces manage their sport gaming across their particular territories, respectively. Perhaps we need to find a way of revenue sharing between the various teams. I understand that. But why this different discrepancy in terms of the treatment? I'm not against it per se, but why treat this horse racing sector different to other sectors?
I think the issue, and thank you for the question, I think the issue must relate to what's in front of us right now, which is Bill C218. And what we want to focus on is we don't want to do anything that's hurting the racing industry. And that's what this amendment that we're proposing will do. It will leave the racing industry in the same position that they're in now. Now, are there issues with respect to racing? I'm sure there are. I mean, I used to be in that business. But the reason that they're supporting sports betting is because they see it as something that will really benefit horse racing and Woodbine and all the other tracks and the horsemen and everybody all across the country. So that's why they're supporting it. And that's why I think, if there are other issues to deal with, let's deal with them down the road. But let's bring in from the cold, from the gray market, let's bring it into a licensed and regulated environment, and we don't want to miss this opportunity this time. We missed it a number of years ago, and none of those dollars were working for any Canadians over the last period of time. So now's the time to solve this problem. And if there's other things that can help horse racing in the future, I would be all in favor of looking at it.
Okay. Merci. Thank you. I have a further question for Chief Deere. I understood your remarks. If I've understood correctly, there was no negotiation or agreement with Quebec in this matter. What is your specific request vis-a-vis Bill C218? I understand you've suggested amendments in writing that we'll receive at a later stage, but right now, could you please give us a sense of what your requests or demands are?
Well, we're looking for a carve out, ensure that we are not left behind and forgotten this time. A lot of the terms that we heard here was the offshore market, the illegal market. We do not fit in those categories. We are a legitimate gaming institution here in Kahnawake. We have the regulatory side, and we also have. So through that, in the last 25 years, we've been working in this industry. We've asked to have recognition from both Quebec and Canada to come to some sort of agreement around this, and that has never happened. There have always been issues. And again, we are here today to ask that we have a legitimate gaming architecture here in Kahnawake as it was described, and that the amendments afford us a spot so that we are not labeled either offshore or illegal, as has happened in the past.
Thank you very much, Chief Deere. Thank you, Monsieur Fortin. That was an extra minute for you. I hope you're keeping track.
I don't, but I trust you. Thank you.
Mr. Massey, please go ahead, sir. It's your turn for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if the next round around, you can have my 2.5 minutes. I have to be back in the House a little bit before that. So thank you very much for our witnesses being here. Chief Deere, and thank you for being here as well, too. So principally, you're just concerned that you're going to be left outside of the offshore and considered illegal. But those are the primary concerns to make sure that that's not the case, in that you can continue the operations that you have right now in a fully binding way, in a recognized way. Is that correct?
Yes, and actually we could refer to our legal counsel, who has actually supplied us with some of the terminology that would be used in the amendment of the bill. So Renee, if you would like to speak to that, please.
Sure. Thank you, Chief Deere, and thank you for the question. So as is contained in the written submissions from the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, the proposed amendment is quite simple, and it would be an addition to section 207 sub 1. So that section reads, notwithstanding any of the provisions of this part relating to gaming and betting, it is lawful, and this is where the province has its carve out. And what the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake would propose is an addition of for an Indigenous governing body to conduct and manage a lottery scheme pursuant to the terms of an agreement with the Government of Canada.
Some more on that, just in terms of if there's other repercussions. But essentially, you're just looking to be made whole through this process so that you can continue your operations as you've currently done right now. Is that a good summary?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to thank you, Chief Deere. Now I'm going to quickly move over to the Standardbred Association, to Mr. O'Donnell or Mr. Drew, whoever wants to respond to this. I agree with your the first amendment. Like, I thought the government's legislation was better than what we had drafted originally in this. I've been public on that. In fact, defended the government's legislation from trying to get it repealed in the House of Commons, because I think it actually does, add a value part for the horse racing industry. However, I am having a little difficulty with regards to the historical betting, because it's fantasy betting, and it's done probably through some algorithms and other types of work that's probably quite comprehensive to ensure there's the proper management of it, and it's done on the basis of a couple of U.S. states. It seems to me that's premature for us to do that in this context here. Can you maybe comment on that? Like, why should we change all of our Canadian laws, even in the United States, when there's only 2 states doing that for kind of fantasy betting?
I think I can answer that. The historic betting, it's first of all, it's pari-mutuel, so it's we contend that it was part of our industry, racetrack industry, and what it is, it's a simple slot machine, and they take races from the past as far back as when Sandy Hawley was riding, like you said. So even myself, and they just. You put your quarter in your machine, and it just runs an eighth of a mile, say, right? And it contributes, to that part would go to operations, racing, or whatever. And the integrity part is, goes with all the rest of the regulations, I think.
So, but what you're doing, you're confirming a process how you play it. I mean, that's one thing. Yeah. But right now, I mean, that would be a big departure than real timed and real sports betting. I mean, this is a fantasy bet that you could apply to just about anything. And why would we change our national and our provincial models based upon something 2 states have just started to experiment with? And I understand that in one of the states, it's actually been, a little bit difficult to get it defined, whether it's betting or whether it's slot machine. And now you referred to that. But at any rate, why should we do it right now on this bill, or delay this bill, or complicate this bill for something that 2 states are experimenting with?
I think
if I could comment related, the current bill, and we support the issue of single event sports wagering for many aspects. One of the big aspects is there is a lot of black market wagering on single sports wagering and also on horse racing. And the implementation of this bill with the integration of betting on single sports events most likely will reduce the amount of wagering that takes place on horse racing. So we are in fact looking for some offset, and this is one methodology that has been used and has been used successfully, where it can be integrated in a parimutuel platform. We would integrate it onto the existing platforms of racetracks and put those events in as a specific parimutuel wagering event, which is currently regulated. And the CPMA has agreed that they would regulate the use of historic horse racing. They have given us that commitment.
But I guess my question was, is why should we like complicate the current situation by two experimental states on this issue versus, and which is a fantasy. It's not based upon any reality whatsoever. It's a mixture of things. It's a concoctation of several things that took place in the past, an interpretation of those metrics, and then put on a slot machine. Versus out of what you're asking for, I think, which is very reasonable in terms of the amendment that was done from the government legislation, which is very real. It would seem to be that's a stretch for the current law right now to experiment this entire process, and it would seem that it's only being done as a way to compensate for revenue from the industry that's struggling for a variety of different reasons, and this is very important. And again, I supporting this industry for many, many reasons, but it's not happening right now, and I don't even know if historical gaming on horses or any other type of thing is taking place in the black market or the illegal market or the organized crime market. So it seems to be like this is a stretch to include for a problem that's outside of this. Whereas I think the first part of it is actually a value-added amendment that actually helps the industry, and also what you're asking through a historical can also eventually, once researched properly, can be done provincially anyways.
Thank you very much. My apologies, we won't have time for an answer, but Mr. O'Donnell, if you would like to provide a written response afterwards, we're happy to receive that. And we'll now go into our second round of questions for 5 minutes each. I don't know which member from the Conservative Party would like to go. Is that you, Mr. Moore?
That's me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you to all the witnesses, and it's good to see my colleague Kevin Waugh here, who has championed this private members bill. There does seem to be certainly a lot of agreement on this bill. I want to speak to one of the proposed amendments that's been put forward, and that is the carve out for horse racing. And we've heard a testimony both from this panel as well as the previous panel on the importance of this. So maybe Mr. O'Donnell or Mr. Drew, if you could speak to the what we didn't hear today is the economic importance in the communities of ensuring that this carve out exists. Would you like to maybe either one of you expand on that?
Or go ahead, Dave.
The impact of horse racing is wide-ranging in the communities in which we operate. It's very much agricultural based, includes breeding farms where people are breeding and raising horses to be raced. It includes the purchase and raising and training of these horses by qualified trainers. It includes drivers who drive horses, jockeys who are a part of it, all the backstretch workers who work with horses day in and day out. On average, there are more than 2 people employed within our industry for every horse that is involved in racing. And then in the communities where racetracks are, which are many of them agricultural based societies, London, Ontario, Elora, and so on, the agricultural based societies, Dresden have a strong agricultural base, and all of the things that make racing happen, all the contributors, feed companies, veterinarians, blacksmiths. So it is very, very wide ranging in terms of the economic impact, and we want to sustain that to the best of our abilities.
Hey, thank you for that answer. And as someone from a riding that has a great deal of agriculture and horse, a lot of owners in the area, and I know the economic impact that that can have in our communities. So, Mr. Levy, on you mentioned the gray market. We didn't really expand on that. I think we all have an idea of you know, the black market on things, and also what we're trying to do here. But can you expand a bit on the gray market when you use that terminology? You're on mute.
Thank you for the question. You know, we consider anything that is currently undertaken in terms of sports betting that's occurring in Canada today, is whether you call it gray market, whether you call it black market in the US, or whether you call it illegal. In the criminal code, single event wagering is not permitted, period, end of story. And that's what this bill is about, which is to amend that. Today, it's estimated that in the non-legal and safe and legal environment that we're trying to, that this bill will foster, that there's, you know, the Canadian Gaming Association says $14 billion has been wagered outside of the legal regulatory framework at this point in time. Deloitte said that by 2025, that number could be as high as $25 billion. That's money that's not going to help companies like ours create jobs that we're doing. It's create innovation. And from a political standpoint, it's money that's not being taxed and redistributed for the benefit of all Canadians. So, you know, what we think is that this law will level the playing field. We can all apply. It's going to be a competitive environment, and that's what we look forward to.
Oh, I see. I only have 30 seconds. I'm from New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada, and the Atlantic Lottery Corporation already submitted a brief supporting this. But if you could just quickly, Mr. Levy, what do you think the impact will be on the illegal market with the passage of this legislation?
I think it'll be dramatic. I think, you know, we have millions of customers coast to coast on our app who love the app, who love our brand, who are creating news and content from us. They, you know, our research is saying that they're waiting for something like this to occur and make it easy for them and make it efficient for them and do it in a safe and trusted environment. And that's what this bill will do. We're not talking about generating new revenues. We're talking about bringing them out of the cold into a regulated environment, which I think is so important. And, you know, it's been hurtful for the last number of years. I can't imagine how bad it will be if we don't get this passed today.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Mr. Moore, we'll now go to Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and hello to my colleagues. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. And my questions will be for Chief Deere and Chief DeLille. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, Chief DeLille. And I'm actually coming to you from Mi'kmaq, and it's an honor to speak to both of you. Both of you, you've mentioned that in most provinces in Canada, there are agreements between provincial governments and Indigenous governments when it comes to Indigenous participation in gaming, where gaming revenues are shared with the Indigenous communities within the province. However, as you stated, it's not the case in your community. So as others were asking your questions around this, I changed kind of the structure of my question. I'm wondering if you could tell us, and if you can go into some detail, you know, if you had that revenue source coming, what would be the priorities in particular in your community? I'm very curious of that to show cause and effect.
The priorities are filling in the gaps. That's one of the things that we're doing. And again, language and culture is integral, you know, to who we are as a people, and we're trying to revive that. There has been, you know, a movement with the Canadian government around, you know, reviving the language and supporting that. But so much has been lost and so much work needs to be done. Also looking at, you know, we talk about the infrastructure, you know, we still have people with water issues. And in this community specifically, we've had a lot of dumping, illegal dumping over the years, going way back to the 50s and 60s. There were dump sites that were created, and we don't even know what's in that land. So not all of our land has become usable. There's a lot of testing that needs to be done before we utilize lands. So it's very concerning when people have private land they want to build. What is there, you know? And we have the highest cases of scleroderma, you name it, autoimmune diseases within this community and cancer. The rates are outrageous for a small community as ours. We also do a lot of servicing and helping in that area when it comes to health. You know, we have the older population that sometimes has to choose between medicine and food and hydro, and you know, so there are so many areas that we need to fill in as the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. Things are brought to us on a regular basis. Just this week, a man came forward who needs assistance in his home, a ramp, an elevator or something. He's dragging himself from his wheelchair down to the basement where his bedroom is. In the evening, he'll go down, you know, in that manner. So like the needs in this community are from the little to the large. Again, it's an endless list for us. The government does not fund all of the needs for Indigenous communities, as we have seen. There are many holes. When it comes to education, you know, we've been fighting so hard for secondary education. We try to promote people to further their education in this community, but yet there's not enough funding for that. There's many challenges. So, I mean, the list goes on and on.
I've worked in a previous life meeting before I was elected. I worked predominantly in the 13 First Nations communities in Nova Scotia, and there's an assumption by many that that monies, for example, as you just said, around education, that everyone gets funding, and that's not the case, as you know all too well,
right.
And that sound investments need to be made. And I really appreciate both you and Chief DeLille talking in great detail as to how we can, you know, look at this as an opportunity. And I really appreciate your historical context. So question for both of you. In terms of other communities, do you look to are there other communities that you look at if this amendment were to happen as best practices, a best practice First Nations community or Inuit community that you would, you know, look to in terms of, you know, using that their successes as blueprints?
Thank you, Mike. And you did pronounce my name correctly, Bilal.
Good.
So Mike to Mike. Yes, absolutely. And Chief Deere mentioned earlier, I just want to go back to the first question you asked.
Sure.
We've developed internal funds both for individuals as well as business. Kahnawake Emergency Measures Emergency Measures Fund and the Business Interruption Fund. And we've literally poured millions of dollars directly from our online gaming established business back into the pockets of individuals, whether they be people in the community that have lost jobs because of COVID, people that have worked across the border that cannot do that because of COVID, and businesses that have had to shut based on our own task force, who has kept us very safe over the past year plus now. So millions of dollars have been poured into that. Back to the new question you've asked, we've looked to our sisters and brothers, and thank you, Mr. Badaway, for acknowledging the land that you sit on in Six Nations and other places to establish similar to what we're doing here in Kahnawake for the past not only 6 years, but 25 years as well with other online gaming through Mohawk Internet Technologies and the Kahnawake Gaming Commission doing licensing. There's looking to establish a fund to be able to help clean water, not only in Kahnawake, but beyond our borders as well. And I have to say it this way, for the failure of the Canadian government to be able to bring our people out of third nation, third world type of resources that they do not have. So we don't sit on any type of natural resource here. We've been very ingenious in terms of bringing that forward. So thank you for the question.
Thank you to both.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. And now, last but not least, we'll go to Monsieur Fortin for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Merci, Madame. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. My question is for Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell, I'd like you to explain your point of view on the following matter, whether or not to exclude horse racing from Bill C-218. We know that C-13 excluded it, whereas C-218 does the opposite. So it's my understanding that you're of the opinion that horse racing should be excluded, but I'd like to understand why horse racing should be treated differently to all other sports.
Well, excuse me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I can't hear myself here. We're an industry by ourselves, and whatever money comes in, you know, is part. That's how we survive. They call it a sport of kings. It's really not a sport of kings. It's just a hard-working bunch of agriculture grassroots people that own horses and try to race them for purse money to feed their families, basically, and do all the other things that they do with horses, to feed them and raise them and breed them and whatnot. And our fear is that we're going to be left out of this altogether. That as Mr. Levy says, I commend him that we should be protected somehow. That if they're betting on our product, we just want a little piece of that and to be protected, get some money back to help run our organization or our industry. Now the black market, they bet on our racing, and no matter what they do on any sport or anything they bet on, those industries don't receive anything back. So I think that's the most important thing, that we have to be included somehow.
Parce que on comprend.
We understand that you have a lot of expenses and costs, but if I were to compare horse racing to the National Hockey League, well, hockey matches cost a lot too, and everything that involves. So why would we have a different rationale for horse racing? Perhaps it's not an easy answer to give me, but still.
Well, I think any of the other sports, they operate on admissions, sponsorships, TV deals. All we have is the people that bet on the races. That's the only income that we have on the horse side. On the horse people side, we share in the revenue. Where racetracks, they have food and beverage, a few other things. We don't share in the food and beverage admissions. It's only on the commissions from betting directly on the horses that provide us with purse money and sire stakes money, to be more specific.
Merci, Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, thank you, Mr. Fortin.
And that concludes our second hour of panelists and questions. I'd like to take this time to thank all of our witnesses for your very important testimony and your remarks today. If there are further clarifications that you would like to provide to our committee, I ask that you please send them in as soon as possible to our committee clerk so that we can include them in our deliberations. Thank you again for being here today. And for the members, just a very quick reminder that the deadline for submitting amendments for Bill C-218 is today at 4 p.m. If you have any questions or any issues with that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Mr. Clerk as well. Thank you all very much, and I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.